What was that? Good evening. Welcome to my instant reaction. It's late at night, 11 o'clock. Thank you for staying up and bearing with me. I hope you just checked out my grades. The Niners lost 40-34 tonight, and I'm going to get into all the implications of this big loss. But first, there's news. Brock Purdy gutting it out, down 12 in the fourth quarter of a game that didn't matter, got sacked, injured his surgically repaired throwing elbow. Not good. After the game, Kyle Shanahan said it probably wasn't a big deal, just nerve stuff, but they're going to have an MRI. They're going to give him an MRI just to be careful. Then Brock Purdy comes in and said that his elbow felt like it was on fire when he injured it, and that was a similar feeling when he tore his UCL. He's confident he didn't tear his UCL again, but he did seem concerned. More concerned than Kyle Shanahan, who didn't seem particularly concerned enough, frankly. But maybe Kyle Shanahan just has a poker face. So, of all the bad things that happened in this game, Jake Moody being Jake Moody, Kyle Shanahan being Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy throwing a bunch of picks, this was by far the worst, because the game didn't matter. What mattered was not getting anyone seriously injured, and God forbid having Brock Purdy injure the same body part that he already had surgery on. I mean, if he has to have surgery on this, I'm not saying he does. I don't know. He doesn't know. The team doesn't know. They'll find out tomorrow. But heaven forbid if he has to have off-season surgery, I mean, he's not getting an extension from anyone. He cost himself a bunch of money. The Niners potentially cost their starting quarterback an off-season. I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but there was a reason why people said maybe Brock Purdy shouldn't play in this game that doesn't count behind an offensive line that's not his offensive line. I mean, something bad could happen. He could get hurt. He doesn't look 100% anyway. But you know what? It's football. He wanted to play. If he had won this game, people would be saying that he deserved $60 million a year. So he understood the risk. He wanted the payday, and in chasing $60 million a year, which is what his agent apparently thinks he's worth, he may have given everything away, lost everything. Who knows? We'll find out tomorrow more about Brock Purdy's elbow, but I couldn't imagine worse news than a Brock Purdy throwing elbow injury. I mean, could be worse if it's surgery required. Don't know. But the Niners, Kyle Shanahan said his Purdy's status for next week, this Sunday against the Cardinals, is in question. I don't see why you would play him in that game unless you really don't care about protecting him at all. I mean, come on. Enough. The offensive line is a bunch of backups at this point, and he's injured. I don't know how injured, but he's injured, and he doesn't need to play week 18. So that's the news with Brock Purdy, the injury news. Now let's talk about what he did. Brock Purdy in the fourth quarter really soiled the bed. He was perfect in the first half. He had 2 incomplete passes, 2 touchdown passes, a touchdown run, quarterback rating of 158.3. Doesn't get any better than that. Comes back in the second half while winning, throws 3 picks to the same guy. The first one didn't count. Throws a pick to Kirby Joseph. The play doesn't count. The pick doesn't count because of a defensive pass interference penalty. Very next play, throws a pick again to the same guy. Comes back later in the game, throws another pick to the same guy over the middle. And I think we're starting to see who Brock Purdy is. He's not good in the second half. He's been bad in the second half all year. He's really good in the first half. He's really good if he has a big lead. He's really good if he doesn't have to be the man on his offense. But as soon as the game gets tight and he has to deliver, he has to be the guy, he's going to lose. We've seen that from Brock. He's not clutch. He's not a closer. He's a starting pitcher, but you want to take him out in the 5th inning. You don't even want to leave him in there in the 6th. You got to get him out of there. He'll give you 5 good innings, but that's not $60 million a year. He's done this over and over and over again. This year. He's had so many games where he had the ball and it was a one-score game and he absolutely blew it with turnovers. I mean, he's the main reason they lost this game. Jake Moody cost him 7 points, and Brock Purdy turned the ball over not once, but twice. Hard to win that way. And it's like, what's troubling to me about this is like we talk about Jake Moody having the yips, which of course he does. What about Brock Purdy? Every time the game's close to the second half, you know what's going to happen. Here comes the interception. Oh, there it is. You can set your watch to it. He is the reincarnation not of Joe Montana, not of Jeff Garcia, not of Steve Young, not of Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy was more clutch than that. He's the reincarnation of Steve DeBerg. Kids, look him up. He's the guy Montana replaced. Bill Walsh once famously said that Steve DeBerg would play just well enough to get you beat. That's Brock Purdy this year. So is he worth $60 million a year? No. Is he worth $40 million a year? No. He's as good as his running back. And what the Niners should do, I'm just going to say it. We've seen enough. They should trade him. His best football is behind him. If they bring him back next year, it'll be more of the same, and his trade value will go down. If they extend him, he'll be untradeable. They should trade him now. If they could get a first-round pick from some naive team, they got to do it. If they could, the Raiders need a quarterback, but they're not really in position to take the top two guys in this year's draft, Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders. That's a desperate team that makes bad decisions. Maybe they'll trade the 49ers their first-round pick for Brock Purdy. Take that first-round pick. Now you got 2 picks in the top 15, and go sign Sam Darnold, who will be cheaper than Brock Purdy if Brock Purdy hasn't cost himself millions and millions of dollars the last few weeks. I don't know. But this guy isn't it. He's a choker. He's the Jake Moody of quarterbacks. If he doesn't have to be the man, he's fine. He might be really good. But making $60 million a year, you're the man. And he can't handle that pressure. He can't handle the pressure of almost making $60 million a year, of chasing the $60 million a year contract. That's too much for him. I mean, really, if he had won this game, you could have been like, who cares? Show us this when it matters against the Rams when you put up 6 points. But he choked in a game that didn't matter. He choked in a game that didn't count. He still choked. Too much pressure. He's not going to win a Super Bowl. We've seen enough. Trade him before the rest of the league figures it out if they haven't figured it out already. Trade him for a first-round pick if you can get him, and sign Sam Darnold, who is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. And before you say, Brock, that Sam Darnold has a better offensive line, go look on Pro Football Focus. They have the same exact pressure percentage per dropback. I don't want to hear those excuses. Jared Goff is not an elite quarterback, but he is a franchise quarterback. I mean, if there's a distinction, he showed it tonight. He was not going to be the reason the Lions lost that game. Was he perfect? No. Can he move? Absolutely not. But he didn't turn the ball over twice, let alone once. The Lions got their money's worth from Jared Goff tonight. The Niners did not get their money's worth from Purdy, and they only paid him like $7.95. Before the game, Jed York apparently told Tim Kawakami that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and everyone's coming back next year. Whoopee! Run it back. Let's see that again. I want to see that crew try a little harder. Every time they lose, you want to hear about how the Niners, they're really upset now. This is going to galvanize them. This adversity is what they need to really lock in. It's week 17. They're not locking in. This has not been a pleasant, positive experience. There are no moral victories from this season. It's been a horrific, horrendous failure. I saw a stat today that the Niners had a 78% chance to make the playoffs before the season started. 78. They're 6-10. And their franchise quarterback, who everyone says is so freaking great, has been here for every game except one. What's the excuse? I don't know. Okay, let's keep going. Nick Sorensen, come on down. Been really going to bat for you all year, but saying, it's not fair to scapegoat this guy. The defense hasn't had as big of a regression as the offense. How could Kyle Shanahan do that? Man, fire him. But that's not really fair, but it is. Here's the thing. Let's reassign him. He could be the special teams coordinator. He used to be a special teams coordinator. Fire Schneider, move Sorensen to special teams, fire Brandon Staley, who's in charge of the ball meeting, which is a meeting once a week about the importance of getting turnovers. I don't know what you say in that meeting. Get the turnover, catch the ball, strip the ball, please. Pretty please. I mean, whatever he's saying, it's not working. He can go. Schneider can go. Sorensen can go to special teams, and the Niners can get an entirely different defensive coordinator with a new defensive philosophy. Now, I do want to say this is Kyle Shanahan's fault again, because this is what he wanted. He brought in Steve Wilks, who didn't come from his coaching tree, was running a different scheme and wanted to evolve the defense. And Kyle Shanahan said, no. We want to go back to what we were doing. So he elevates Nick Sorensen, who's just doing what Kyle wants, which is run freaking the softest vanilla zone coverages ever all the time. That's what Kyle wants. I don't know why. That's what he wants. So in the two real critical plays of this game, I mean, Nick Sorensen was abysmal, but he was essentially following orders. But no, he needs to go. To special teams. First of all, it was 4th and goal from the 4. He calls some generic vanilla zone coverage like they're at midfield. He's got his DBs backpedaling 5 yards deep in the freaking end zone. Defend the goal line. It's 4th and goal from the 4. What are you defending? What patch of grass do you think you're defending right now? I don't understand that. You're trying to take away 3-yard passes, 2-yard passes, 4-yard passes. Call man-to-man coverage. Press man. Take away the slant. Amon-Ra St. Brown just turned around, caught the ball, walked into the end zone. That's a freebie. Take that away. But you didn't. And then later in the game on 4th and 3 from like midfield, one of the last drives of the game for the Lions, another zone coverage. And Goff just gets the ball and throws to his tight end who's wide open and then runs after the catch and gets 19 yards. Too easy. 4th and 3. You're trying to take away the quick throws, not concede them, not invite the other team to throw them. You got to go. Now, again, this is what Kyle wants. And if Nick Sorensen called press man coverage with the blitz, maybe Kyle Shanahan would call a timeout and veto him. I don't know. But those are two of the worst calls I've ever seen. And I do know that after the first one, when Nick Sorensen called that ridiculous zone coverage on 4th and goal from the 4, the camera panned to John Lynch in his little suite, and he was like going crazy, punching the air. Yeah. What in the world is that? I don't know. So, yeah, I think they're probably, if they don't get a new defensive coordinator and a new defensive philosophy, more important, I don't know what they're doing. I don't see how you take this seriously. Again, Jed York apparently said he's not going to fire Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch this offseason. Fine. You got to fire someone. You got to bring in some change somewhere, and it's got to be a whole new defense. No more wide 9, no more vanilla zone coverage. The rest of the league is going blitz, man-to-man coverage. The Niners need to, get with the freaking program. Let's talk Kyle Shanahan. So Kyle Shanahan comes out and all of a sudden is coaching well in the first half. It's like, where is this Kyle been? All of a sudden, he gets Debo involved early, but then shells Debo and just features Ricky Pearsall over and over again, and it works. And it's like, wow, maybe if you had done this the last 2 months, you would have won some games. But no, you do it now, and it's working. And you're up 8, and you go to the second half, and he's leading again. And it's like, what does he do? He does what he always does, which is pass unrelentingly until Brock Purdy messes it up. So yeah, Brock Purdy exposes himself, exposed who he is as a quarterback by giving the ball up, but Kyle Shanahan set up Brock Purdy to fail. Ben Johnson, what they said on the broadcast is that Kyle Shanahan liked the challenge of matching wits with Ben Johnson, that the whole world is calling Ben Johnson the next offensive genius, and Kyle accepted the challenge of trying to match wits with him or outwit him. That's the challenge you accept? What about 2 weeks ago with the season on the line against the freaking Rams and all you could muster was 6 points when all you needed was 13? No, this is the challenge. You're better than Ben Johnson, who a lot of your own fans want to coach this team more than you. It almost felt like Kyle was responding to his critics. Oh, you think Ben Johnson should replace me, huh? Well, let's show everyone who's the real offensive genius. Okay. So Kyle got off to a hot start like he usually does. And with the lead, he just passes a bunch and then gives the lead away. And then meanwhile, you look up and the Lions called what? 34 passes, 31 runs? The Niners called what? 35 passes, 17 runs? Who's better? And the Lions seem like they have so much fun playing for him. He called a hook and ladder. What was the last time? I mean, I've seen them run it. But wouldn't you want to play for a coach who had that in the play sheet? That's something you practice and actually got to run on Monday Night Football. I want to play for that guy. Now, he wouldn't want me to play for him. I'm a 36-year-old, 175-pound on a good day Jew. But I'm just saying I would throw my hat in the ring if I could to play for that team because it looks like fun. And the Niners offense looks like, standard offense, nothing too creative. And at the end of the game, Ben Johnson's team had 40 points and Kyle's had 34. Now, if Kyle didn't have Jake Moody, maybe they have 41, but that's a different story. I just think it's funny that this was the game. This was the day that Kyle Shanahan decided to give it his all, to break out all the stops, and he still got outshined by a better coach. This was Kyle's best. 2 turnovers, no running game. Now, I understand he's working with a lot of backup offensive linemen. They don't really know his running scheme. He can't call a bunch of different plays, whatever. Outside zone, inside zone, 2 plays, 2 concepts. They can run that. You got to stay balanced. It sets up play action. It protects your quarterback who can't win shootouts on his own. We know that. Goff can't win like that. And he's better than Purdy. They actually stayed balanced because you don't want to put the game in Goff's hands like that. We know that. Johnson knows that. Goff knows that. Kyle, either he doesn't know that you can't put the game in Brock's hands, or he wants to put the game in Brock's hands so that Brock will blow it and that Brock will take the heat instead of Kyle. I don't know. You tell me. I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but I can tell you that this post-game instant reaction is presented by BetUS, my personal favorite sportsbook and casino. Check them out. Use promo code U2150 when you do. That was smooth, wasn't it? All right. Let's keep going, man, because I don't want to just put a bunch of blame on 1 or 2 people. Let's talk John Lynch. John Lynch, who a few days ago went on the radio and said that the Niners can't use injuries as an excuse for this down season, that they have to identify root causes. Did you look in the mirror? How about you as the root cause, Mr. Lynch? Because I can't help but notice that the last 7 years, you had Adam Peters as your right-hand man, and he kept getting promoted from vice president to assistant GM, and he's been a scout. He took the traditional route through the front office to the top, as opposed to you, who, you were a Hall of Fame player and you got to just slide in right at the top. So you had Adam Peters doing your homework the last 7 years. Now he's gone. And I can't help but notice that Washington has its shit together. They are not a dysfunctional organization. They had been a dysfunctional organization for my whole life. Now, they're not dysfunctional. They have a really good head coach who people want to play for, an enthusiastic head coach. They have a really good offensive coordinator who's not head coach material, but he's in the right job. And they have their quarterback. They got that guy right away. Didn't mess around. Got their quarterback, got their organization, got their culture squared away, and they're going to be good for a long time. Washington. That's a stable organization. Adam Peters goes there, instantly stabilizes it. Forget the draft. Big picture. Stabilizes one of the most dysfunctional organizations in sports. Right away. And in a corresponding move, all of a sudden the Niners become one of the most dysfunctional organizations in football. Nothing but drama. In addition, they just completely neglected their trenches this offseason, particularly their D-line. They cut Eric Armstead and replaced him with a bunch of nobodies who are old and overpaid. And now they can't stop the run to save their lives. Adam Peters wouldn't have let that happen. And so now I'm looking at a team that doesn't have a general manager. Adam Peters was the general manager. John Lynch was the face guy. He was the designated talker. And he's a good talker. But he's not a real general manager. That guy's in Washington. So the Niners either need to fire John Lynch or hire an assistant general manager to replace Adam Peters and essentially do John Lynch's job, like Peters did. Because if the Niners don't bring in an assistant general manager to sort of oversee everything, then who's to say the Niners won't have another awful offseason? They had some good draft picks, Renardo Green, Dominic Puni, but big picture free agency, what did they do? What did they accomplish in free agency? Nothing. I think John Lynch got exposed big time this year without Adam Peters. This team became one of the most dysfunctional teams in the league, and you'd think that a Hall of Famer like John Lynch could keep it together, but he couldn't. Let's take some super chats. Brother Bob says, breaking, Niners extend Moody and Kyle Levy for 4 years. 808 Niners says, Brock is trash, trade him for a fourth. A fourth! John B says, coach said Brock is a bridge quarterback, Golden Gate Bridge. I love that. This dude says Kirby Joseph, Brock Purdy, poor guy, zero clutch gene. The coach says Golden Gate Brock, best bridge quarterback in the league. Why is the Golden Gate Bridge better than the Bay Bridge? I like the Bay Bridge. Golden Gate Bridge is pretty though, but it's red. Shouldn't it be golden? I never understood that. To this day. This guy says, Grant, WTF did I just watch? Oh, you watched the 2024 49ers pull a 2024 49ers. You watched Kyle. You watched Brock. You watched Moody. Are you surprised? You've seen this before any number of times. DS 1984 says second game in NFL history was 0 punts. Haha. Something to be proud of. This guy again says Kyle was in his bag the first half. Kyle is more worried about beating Ben Johnson than making the playoffs. Self-centered Lou Zahir. Boxing fan times 4. Why times 4? Says props to Turdy G and Jake Maher. Get that top 10 pick, baby. True Sav says Kyle Shanahan is the physical manifestation of privilege. David Bousquet says Purdy hurt. This means he'll miss the playoffs. Ha! Playoff? Sal Gonzalez says Kyle read all the tea leaves saying Ben Johnson was the next hot stuff, so it makes sense why we actually saw his best called game plan saved for today. Figures when it's a meaningless game. Yeah, it's like, what? Let's save all our cool plays for the Lions game Forget this Rams game that actually matters. Sean Brady says, we wasted 3 first-round picks on Trey. What do you think it would cost to trade up for Sanders? Like 3 first-round picks, probably. I don't know for sure. Let's do a little positivity. Ricky Pearsall, you're a good player. I want to apologize for doubting him. I need to remember that Kyle Shanahan doesn't play the best players, particularly if they're young guys. We should know this by now. He said it himself at the Super Bowl just a few months ago. He was talking about Brock Purdy, and he was saying that he always knew Brock Purdy was the best quarterback on the team, even when he had Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance above him on the depth chart. He just said that Brock Purdy had to get the job the right way, which is apparently waiting until Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo both break bones in their legs. That's the right way for Brock Purdy to get the job. Not like outperforming them in practice and then being rewarded for his performance by starting. That's how it works on every other team. No. The best players, if they're young, have to wait until other guys get hurt, even if they're better. Or in the case of Ricky Pearsall, has to wait until week 17 when the Niners are officially eliminated from playoff contention, and then he can get 10 targets. I don't get it. But it's important to remember that you cannot write off young players on the 49ers because they're not playing. I mean, Samuel Womack didn't play for 4 years, gets waived, goes to Indianapolis, but plays well. Juwan Jennings buried for 4 years, gets 15 targets a season, all of a sudden pressed into duty because Brandon Ayuk gets hurt, plays freaking hella well. So I'm going to make sure I remember that in the future. Ricky is explosive. He's a good route runner. He's not small. He's not scared to go over the middle. He's a very well-rounded player. He looks like someone that could be part of the future. He looks like someone who should have been getting 10 targets a game since the freaking bye week. And I think it's so interesting that we've been pleading with Kyle. Would you please take Debo's targets, all the targets, all the plays that you call for Debo, throw them out and call them for freaking Pearsall. And it's like, he was like, no, for weeks, can't do that. We're trying to win games. And then when the season's over, finally 1 target for Debo, 10 for Pearsall, 34 points. 147 yards from scrimmage for Pearsall and a touchdown. The Yorks are so eager to keep this all together, but don't they want to know why Ricky Pearsall wasn't allowed to make an impact until the season was already over? Aren't they curious? Don't they ask these questions? Can't they at least have a meeting? I mean, isn't one of the more maddening things about this particular iteration of the 49ers that they had all these good players that they didn't use? Pearsall was here. He could have been making a big impact, like Ladd McConkey on the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh. Is he really better than Ricky Pearsall, or does he have a head coach who isn't afraid of playing rookies? Is it possible that Pearsall could have been doing this the last 2 months if he just had Kyle Shanahan calling plays for him? I think, yeah. He had that really nice game against Tampa a while ago and then got put on ice for no reason. While the season was in the balance, they needed him. Anyway, he'll be here next year. Maybe the Niners will give him the ball. Although, with Ayuk coming back, I wouldn't count on it. Brandon Graham says 16 straight passes in a 1-score game. A plumber as his left tackle. Kyle treats his players as commodities. He has zero feel for the moment. Yeah, I would have to say that's true. Real quick, can we stop with the sentimentality, the nostalgia, the extensions for players just because? Eventually, you got to take the Bill Walsh, George Seifert approach and get year of a guy a year too early and not a year too late. The 49ers cannot stop the run without Dre Greenlaw. Turns out, Dre Greenlaw was more valuable to this defense than Fred Warner. Fred Warner, his entire ascension as a quote-unquote Hall of Fame caliber linebacker coincides with Dre Greenlaw's tenure on the team. Before Greenlaw was here, Warner was nothing special. And since Greenlaw's been down, Warner's been nothing special. I mean, teams run the ball at will against the Niners with him, the supposed best linebacker in football, on the field. Did you know that next year, his contract number, his salary cap number, will be $29.17 million? That's like quarterback money. That can't happen. So the Niners can do a couple of things. They could ask him to take a pay cut, which he will refuse. They could extend his contract, which would be a mistake. Or they could trade him. What are you holding on to here? He's an older linebacker. He was healthy for 3 weeks this year. His body began to break down. He's really nothing special without Dre Greenlaw. If there was one expensive vet, I mean, obviously Deebo Samuel, but no one's trading for Deebo Samuel. If there was one expensive vet that the Niners could and should trade, it's Fred Warner. I mean, Nick Bosa is a much better player than Fred Warner. Nick Bosa makes an impact every game. Fred Warner doesn't. I'm sorry. Maybe you guys don't want to hear this right now, but $29.1 million for a linebacker who makes no impact unless Dre Greenlaw's out there? No, can't do that. Got to draw the line somewhere, and that's where I'm drawing the line this offseason. Sorry. The Camper Report says Kyle made Purdy the starter by process of elimination, which sounds funny when I say it. It does sound funny. So why is Jake Moody still on the team? He's having a horrendous year. They could have cut him months ago. They could have cut him after the Super Bowl when he missed an extra point that they really needed. But Kyle Shanahan sticks with him. And I wonder how the rest of the team receives that. Because I don't think the rest of the team has any particular allegiance to Moody. He's a kicker. He's barely a football player. Kickers are a dime a dozen. Like, do the other players even get to know the kicker? They do different things. Kickers are replaceable. There's guys on the couch right now who can do Jake Moody's job better than him. So there's no reason to stick by a kicker while he's missing kicks, going through the yips, losing games. You just cut him and find another guy. That's what you do. But the Niners won't. And you're wondering why. Don't you think the players are wondering why too? And the answer isn't that hard to figure out. Don't you think they've figured it out? The answer is Kyle Shanahan picked Jake Moody. So Jake Moody is the physical embodiment of Kyle Shanahan's stubbornness and ego. He has to be right. He picked this guy himself. He is going to defend Jake Moody because in doing so, he's defending himself. And so once again, he's putting his ego, his reputation above the team. And that's costing them games. Every time Jake Moody takes the field with that hangdog look on his face, I'm sorry, Jake, but no one exudes less confidence than Jake Moody, and then misses the kick. You don't think players are looking at Kyle like, it's your guy. It's who you wanted. You picked him. You defend him every freaking week. You tell us why he deserves to stay on this team. Do the players blame Jake, or do they blame the person who put Jake on the team and defends Jake and refuses to replace him? The most replaceable position in the National Football League. And Kyle says, like, I believe in him. He's got talent. What the hell do you know about kicking? He has talent? What does that mean? Kyle will be the first person to tell you he knows nothing about special teams or kicking, but when asked why he believes in Jake Moody, he's like, well, he's gifted. How? He's awful. He's not suited to be an NFL kicker. He should have been gone. Everyone knows it. He's talented. What does that mean? Paint us a picture with your words, Kyle. He kicks it hard? That doesn't mean he's talented. You got to put it through the uprights. There are these things called uprights, and he doesn't put it through them. talented. Get out of here. All right, last thing, and then I'm out of here. After the game, Nick Bosa, George Kittle, two of the elder statesmen on the team, said a couple things that caught my ear. I found it very interesting. First, it was Bosa. Both were asked about the Lions. Bosa said, it's a really good team, really well coached. They look like they're a lot of fun to play for. That's what Bosa said. Then Kittle was asked about the Lions, and he said, they're a really well-coached team, and the mentality of the head coach, you can see that in all of their players. Huh. When was the last time someone on the Niners said something that glowing about Kyle Shanahan, one of his players? Years. It's been years. And so when Nick Bosa says, that looks like a team that's fun to play for, I don't know about you, but the first thing I think is, are the Niners still a fun team to play for? Because once upon a time, it seemed like the players on the Niners enjoyed themselves. Not this year. This seems like the least enjoyable season I can remember. So the Lions are a fun team to play for. Kittle said it this week too. The Niners, who was the last player that said they had fun playing for the Niners? Kittle said that the head coach's mentality, enthusiasm, his je ne sais quoi, has rubbed off on all his players, and it's cool to see. Does Kyle Shanahan have enthusiasm? Is his enthusiasm rubbing off on his players? No, not really. Enthusiasm matters. Now, Kyle Shanahan could get away with it in the past because his defensive coordinators are enthusiastic. There's leaders in the locker room, and they believed in him as a play caller. Hey, man, you can have no personality. You can look into your play sheet all freaking day and not have any human interaction. Don't care. Just get people open and score points. But he can't even do that anymore. So enthusiasm matters. The Niners are over there looking at the Lions like, oh, I wish we had some of that. Doesn't that look swell, guys? I remember having fun playing football. It looked like that. The Commanders, Dan Quinn, doing a great job. Is he an offensive genius? No. He's enthusiastic. Jim Harbaugh, is he an offensive genius? No. He's enthusiastic. I'm not saying enthusiasm alone makes you a good coach and that it trumps offensive knowledge, but it's freaking matters. And Kyle has none of it. And the Niners are wilting under his dour attitude, and they know it. And they weekly look across the sideline at teams having fun with coaches who have human emotions. And they're like, wow, that looks great. Ha! I wonder what that's like. The Niners know they need to start over. They just haven't said it yet. Jed might not know it, but I think Bosa and Kittle know it, man. They may not have said it to themselves yet, but they're looking at Dan Campbell, and they know that longing they feel right here. They know what that is. That's a feeling they can't ignore because it's the truth. That's the difference between these teams. It doesn't seem like it's fun to play for Kyle Shanahan anymore, man. So much emotional baggage. Him choking, his problems in the fourth quarter. Like, who needs that? That's his problem. He's not going to take responsibility for it. He's not going to say, you know what, blame me for this latest collapse in the fourth quarter. It's my problem. No. Go back and watch Kittle and Bosa. Kittle did it on Friday too. Was it Saturday? No, Friday. Just the longingness and the way they talk about the Lions. Looks like fun over there. Huh. Interesting. Jeffrey Jetson says, should Purdy play next year without an extension? Trade him. Trade his ass to the Raiders or the Titans or wherever and sign Sam Darnold. Can I be more clear about that? Trade his ass. Trade him. Trade him. Tactical Lupus says sometimes it feels like the Niners are all playbook and no play, if that makes sense. Tonight it does. I feel it. 808 Niners says enthusiasm or no to mankind. Who said that? Harbaugh said it. It's important. Kyle has an enthusiasm known to mankind, and it's not much. Graham says, seeing Lynch's reaction in the press box when Moody missed that field goal and when Purdy threw the second INT sums up the Niners season in a nutshell. Who was he mad at? John, you signed Devondre Campbell. You hired Brandon Staley. Oh, one more thing that Kyle Shanahan did tonight that just revealed what an awful job he's done this offseason. Josh Dobbs comes in, leads a touchdown drive, looks just like he looked in preseason, just like he looked in freaking training camp. And yet, when the season was in the balance, must-win game in freaking Green Bay, Kyle Shanahan went with Brandon Allen and his broken finger. And he fumbled and scored 10 points. Because Kyle Shanahan doesn't play the best players. No. The depth chart makes itself. And the best players who find themselves at the bottom just have to wait their turn. This could be years. Years. It's out of Kyle Shanahan's hands. It's not his. He just makes the depth chart. He can't change the depth chart. That's beyond him. Okay, I'm done. Thanks for letting me rant. The game didn't even matter. Brock Purdy got hurt, and Kyle Shanahan found a way to embarrass himself a little bit more. But Ricky Pearsall, big game. I mean, if we're looking for major takeaways, maybe Brock Purdy's injury isn't serious, and the Niners just found themselves a number one wide receiver and improved their draft status. How about that? What a roaring success tonight was. Anyway, stay tuned. We'll find out more about Ricky Pearsall tomorrow afternoon. Cohn Zone tomorrow morning with me and my pops, Lowell Cohn. Check it out.